Hello and welcome to the Brand Odyssey podcast with me, Miranda Latham.
And me, Kylie Hannaford. We're here to take you on an exploration of what goes right and what goes wrong in design, branding and the creative universe.
And I am going to be doing the creative break this week at the end of the episode, and I'll just give a little clue that my story is definitely going to tickle your senses.
Wow.
But first, let's kick off with our personal breaks and makes. So Kylie, you're doing our make story. So what's something great and wonderful and spectacular that's happened in the past few weeks for you?
I feel like this is going to be a slight underwhelming answer because it's a television show. And it is that I have been drawn in and absolutely fascinated by The White Lotus season 3.
As soon as you said TV show, I was like, I know, because you're actually rewatching while you're watching, which is next level commitment.
I've already watched all of the episodes at least twice.
Oh my God. Are you like secretly writing for Vulture? Like what's going on here?
Can neither confirm nor deny if I've watched it more than that.
I love it as well. It's such a good show. Like all seasons have been amazing. This one to me, I think is like blockbuster. Like I've read, it's White Lotus on steroids and, they're going out of the premises of the hotel and stuff. But yeah, I am very much enjoying it.
Yeah, I think it's so dark and twisty and turny and just what is going to happen. Like, it's just a show, and I don't think I had it with the others, and this doesn't actually happen to me that often, where I just keep thinking about it, like, outside of watching it. Like, I'll keep thinking about what's happened, what could happen, where is this all going, all the characters, and so it's just really rabbit-holed into my brain.
So are you trying to solve the whodunit mystery side?
Look, I'm not trying to because I am not wily like that.
No, neither. Like, only thing that I don't want to give anything away, like no spoilers, but I think the only thing that I kind of have thought is like Mook.
She's sus.
She might have a bit of criminal side hustle going on.
Yes.
No one can be that cute.
Did you know that Mook is from a K-pop band?
Yes, I have.
And is actually richer than all of them put together and has like 55 million followers on Instagram.
It's 105 million.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I've stalked her now.
I was riffing.
Yeah, but she's like Beyonce for Asia. And she was the only one who needed like security and entourage on set.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I've gone deep into the blogs too, Kylie.
Yeah.
Like I'm not rewatching at the pace you are, but whenever I'm into a show, I'm going to like Google all the actors, make sure I know their backstories.
Just to contextualize the rewatching of the episodes, sometimes if I have to do work in the evenings, I'll put on a show that I've already watched so I don't have to be like watching it, but it's kind of like there in the background.
It's noise. It's background noise.
Noise, yeah.
That's where I'll watch like the lowest levels of reality TV. Like that's where I'll be watching like the Real Housewives of Sydney or something.
Yeah, it's not that I'm sitting there super sleuthing with my notebook trying to like find the hidden Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I'm not that bad. But yeah, I just love that, as frustrating as it is that it, gets released weekly. So it really creates this dialogue within friends and culture. And like, I'm deep in the obviously White Lotus algorithm and all the memes are just so funny. Like the Piper, no. Like I've seen people do contemporary dances to that. Like so funny.
Buddhism.
I've
analysed why that's so funny. It's because someone with that accent shouldn't be saying Buddhism. Like that's why it's so funny.
Line last night about, if that man's going to have my baby, he better be the best Buddhist in China.
That's right.
She's in Thailand. Anyway, I just love what it's created and all this like chat and, it's quite fun.
Okay, so my break.
I'm looking forward to hearing this because you teased it out at our whip meeting yesterday, but I was like, save it.
Kylie expected that I would be talking about the fact that I just lived through a Brisbane cyclone.
Yes, we should say we had a little unscheduled break in programming because Miranda was in a cyclone. Then there was a bit of illness. We were really busy at work and we had to be realistic about priorities and how we spend our time. But here we are.
Basically in Brisbane now, no one wants to talk about the cyclone. Like it's done, it's had its time and it's over. So, it was a cyclone. It wasn't fun. Moving on, I had this little spark of memory the other day and was laughing to myself about what I think is one of my favourite personal breaks of the last 5 years. So I'm breaking the rules. This is actually a legacy break in my life.
That's fine. Rules were meant to be broken.
Yeah, and it just made me laugh. So I was like, I think you would enjoy this as well. So I'm going to set the era, the time, which was about 7 years ago. So I'd moved to Sydney and I was unemployed. I was looking for jobs on LinkedIn, Seek, and whatever places, pedestrian.
The Loop.
I was looking for jobs, but I had a bit of like spare time in my days for the first time in a long time. And I had sort of getting my bearings around what's available to me to do. And I thought, oh, why don't I go and check out Centennial Park and go for a little trot around the park. I'd never been there before. So I drove off in my exercise gear and went for a nice little run and, nothing too strenuous. I think it's probably about a 4K loop, and I did a bit of walking and I thought, what a beautiful place. I loved that, enjoyed that. So then I was like, I'll go down Burke Street and try this Burke Street bakery that everyone talks about. So I lined up in a nice long line because it's very hot place to visit, and I got myself one of those delicious creme brulee tarts.
I miss Burke Street Bakery.
So good. Like I used to eat quite a lot of those because I used to walk up and down that street and grab one on my way home or to work sometimes. But yeah, delicious. So I got one of them, and then I thought, I've got to go to the pharmacy. So I went to a very busy pharmacy, lined up yet again in a nice long line of people. Then
I'm getting nervous.
Then I went home, and in the apartment that I was living at, there's mirrors in the lift. So anyway, when I got in the lift, I looked in the mirror and realized that I was wearing the exercise shorts, so it's kind of like shorts that had the inbuilt undies in them. And I had them inside out.
How have I never heard this story?
I don't know. So basically, they were black, but I looked like I had a giant pair of black underpants over the top of my shorts.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, in those moments, you have two choices. You can get sad, or I was like a crazy person laughing to myself in the lift because I was like on the floor.
Still with your pants inside out.
Yeah, I literally dropped to the floor pissing myself laughing because I was like, so many people would be wondering why. Unless you were in the know about exercise shorts, I don't necessarily think you would know that they were inbuilt.
Oh my God. So it really does look like you've put a pair of pants over an active choice.
An active choice to wear giant black underpants over shorts. Anyway, a little bit soft, wholesome, fun break where life just goes wrong. And it's not the first time, I'll be honest, it's not the first time in my life I have worn clothes inside out places. It is a problem. For anyone who knows me well, aka my sister and Alex, they will be thinking, of course, this happened to you, because they lived with me and they've seen me.
It's standard.
And even Adam will be like, just put your pajama top the right way around. Why are you wearing it inside out? I don't know what it is. Just fast-moving gal.
Actually, she's a fast-moving gal. It goes back to our beta Barbie. I remember you were top.
Yes.
I think you were inside out Barbie. That's the first thing you said.
It was. It's a thing. It's a thing for me. But that was when I'm like, just check yourself before you get in a car.
Look. Have a little looky.
Look. Yeah.
Think of the joy and curiosity you brought to all those other people.
Just doing it for people bored in lines. But maybe they were like, oh, is this it? Is this
a look? Yeah. Pip Edwards said
just
this is what we're doing
looks.
for activewear now.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Kylie, hit us.
I have a great story today. So it's not a brand, but it's looking at a symbol. Okay, so I'm basically in clue mode now.
Okay.
So it traces a through line through some iconic creative feats in modern history. So it starts in surrealist art, winds its way through rock and roll, and lands in your back pocket. Be surprised if you have any ideas yet.
Nothing.
I'm being purposely elusive.
I'm like,
okay.
Am I in semiotics art class?
I know, I'm going to try really hard not to sound like a year 12 art teacher this episode. Symbol, not brand. One of these a day keeps the doctor away.
Oh, what's an apple?
Yes, so the story of an apple, but not just any apple, the apple.
Not just our technology overlord that rules our life.
Yes, so we will, spoiler alert, we will end up there.
Okay, just curious, are you a green apple or a red apple gal?
I'm very particular with my apples, actually.
Okay.
I'd probably go green over a red, but I also do really love a pink lady.
Oh, I really like a pink lady, and I would go red over green, but we've become a green apple house because Henry, my 5-year-old, if you say particular about apples, like he will not touch anything but a green apple, and it has to be peeled. If it's not peeled, he kind of like munches tiny little bits of skin and leaves them in a pile somewhere.
That's disgusting.
So yeah, now I've decided
so you just get ahead of the curve.
Get ahead of it, yeah. But yeah, now it's a green, and I just find them a bit sharp.
Yeah, I like that tanginess.
I like the tangy sweet of a red apple, and a crisp pink lady is definitely, or a Royal Gala, number one.
Royal Gala, okay. Duly noted. Well, just a little bit about the symbol of an apple, and then we're going to get into a story that involves Rene Magritte, a surrealist artist, leading to the Beatles, leading to, as you said, our technology overlords, Apple computers.
That's very distinct touch points, and that's a grouping I'd never sort of immediately jump at.
I know.
Having in one story.
It's a really cool story. I'm looking forward to telling it. So a little bit about the symbol of the apple. So, when you think about it from the very beginning of recorded history, the apple has been a very present symbol in human storytelling, archetypes, myth-making, all of that, right?
Adam and Eve.
Perfect. Yep. Adam and Eve represents temptation, knowledge, and the consequences of curiosity. And then in Greek mythology and Roman mythology, which are actually quite closely linked, I didn't realize that, but the apple was the symbol of Aphrodite or / Venus in Roman history, and was used as a love gift, which eventually sparked the Trojan War in Greece.
What simpler times they were back then, people could be desiring an apple, or it could create, such conflict. And now I'm we're all such extra people. We want so much from our gifting. We're not going to be I want your apple anymore.
No, we want more.
More, yeah.
I mean, back to White Lotus, that's what Mike Weiss is trying to tell us, right? We're insatiable.
True. Consumer culture.
Anyway, I'll just keep bringing it back to the White Lotus.
I will expect nothing less. Like you said, your brain's basically been overtaken.
Overtaken by Mike White and his mythology. So in Norse mythology, the goddess of eternal youth is the keeper of a wooden box full of apples eaten by the gods, and they eat them when they begin to grow old, and that renders them young again. We have Newton's apple, which supposedly led to the discovery of gravity when he sat under an apple tree and the apple fell on his head. And then the legend of William Tell, where a Swiss patriot who, in return for an execution exemption, was forced to shoot an apple off his son's head with a crossbow, which he successfully did, and then that triggered an uprising against Austrian rule. And then even in fairy tales, it's a poisoned apple that is offered and causes Snow White to fall into her deep sleep.
True. I did not realise that their main character of all our fables and historical stories is a bloody apple.
I know, right? And even if you think about the modern saying, which was your clue, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's why is it an apple? Because I actually did look into it, and it's just that the apple is a symbol of wholesome eating. And so it's just this old saying of eat healthy. But why is it the apple? Why isn't it a peach or a nectarine or a dragon fruit,
A dragon fruit a day keeps the doctor away, doesn't have not the same ring.
That's true. But, a nectarine a day, I'd do that. It's like the fruit version of the Kardashians, just everywhere all the time, being culturally relevant.
Even if you didn't want to hear about an apple, you're going to be hearing about an apple.
Exactly.
You can't avoid it.
I don't follow any of the Kardashians, and I know everything about them. So I feel like it's the same with the apple, right?
I've never thought of the apple being the original Kardashian, so, that's what we're here for.
So you can see over and over again, the apple appears as this central player at pivotal moments of insight, disruption, chaos, and transformation. So that is going to unfurl in this story I'm about to tell you through art, music, and technology. So this story, it all started when I went to go and see the Magritte exhibition with my friend Sorrel earlier this year. And I nerded out and joined the free guided tour. And
Of course you did.
Of course I did. But she quickly told this story, you know, she just like gave the top notes of it. And I was just like, I'm definitely talking about this on the Brand Odyssey podcast. So René Magritte is a Belgian surrealist artist, and like all surrealist artists, challenge the perceptions of reality and the way we see the world. And his work often featured recurring familiar motifs. So that was kind of his whole thing. So he'd have like bowler-hatted men, clouds, pipes, rocks, and apples.
Okay, when you said his name, I couldn't picture the art. Now you've said those motives. It's like
Coming
I'm getting
to
a
you.
mental picture of it. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
The bowler hats.
So yeah, the bowler hats, and like by doing those, repeating those motifs, like he's creating his own visual language. And so he takes these familiar objects and he puts them in unordinary contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of his play, and he apparently had a really great sense of humor. So it's all about playing and, you know, putting an object that's very familiar, putting it somewhere where it doesn't belong, immediately kind of makes it mysterious. It disrupts the image and it forces us to think, what does that mean? Or what does that mean to me? That kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
he loved that his work was easily replicable. And so he actually encouraged his images to be made into posters and postcards and whatever. So I love this about him.
Just like our original Betty.
He was, exactly. I actually thought about Betty when I read this. Yeah.
It's like there's two types of people in the world, right? The ones who see the value of their creations being accessible, and then the ones who are like holding it tight.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, being accessible pays off.
Well, it does, because, you know, as we just witnessed, me just saying, oh, bowler-hatted men and apples and da-da-da, like you haven't even seen the images and you're already getting a vision of what his work was. So I would bet that our dear listeners, if they went and looked at like one of the paintings, they would recognize it and be familiar with it, even if they didn't, you know, study art or whatever, because his imagery is quite prolific.
So I just did a little Google of the apple in front of the bowler hat man.
Mm-hmm.
And the giant, I love when you said he's like to be funny, and I'm like, what kind of artist from 1967, like what is funny? But a giant orange head with a tiny face on it, it's funny.
Yeah. You know, it's really like humorous. The exhibition was excellent. Like it really got this, like, it's very playful. Like all of his work is very playful, and yeah, it was really great to learn more about him. So that's one of his really famous ones, The Son of Man, where the apple is in front of his face. There's the listening room, where there's this like huge apple filling like an entire room. And then the important painting to this story that I'm telling is called Le Jeu de Moret. The Game of Mora, it's called, and it was painted in 1966. And in this painting, a big juicy green apple sits alone in this dark room, and over the top of the apple, the words au revoir are written in this like beautiful cursive script.
It sounds nice.
Yeah. Now enters the next player in this story, the Beatles. So just to give us a timestamp on this story, Magritte had found worldwide success in 1948. So by the time the Beatles enter the story in kind of 1968, he's very well established. So in 1968, the Beatles were at the peak of their creative power. They'd really defined the generation. They'd conquered music. They'd taken LSD, man. They'd like, you know, so they were in a real stage of searching.
Surrealist mindset.
Exactly. So they'd done the LSD thing, and then they traveled to India and they learn about transcendental meditation, which is about altered states of reality just through kind of focusing your mind and that kind of thing. So
60s hippies were having a great time.
Totally. So, yeah, the Beatles were very much into this meditation movement, and it was coming to America and becoming very popular. So, yeah, it really makes sense that they connected strongly with surrealist art. they had released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, which is a bit of a psychedelic album. And it was around this time that, you know, they'd done all this and they'd made an absolute mozza. So their accountants had informed them that they had £2 million, which they could either invest into a business venture or they'd lose it to that tax man.
I never had thought of why they all have side hustles, but it's tax reasons.
Yeah, I hadn't either, but yeah, you're right. This is the original celebrity side hustle. So based off this, they launched their own record label, and they didn't want it to, you know, they're such pure artists, you know, they didn't want it to just be about selling records. Their focus was on artistic freedom and breaking down barriers between musicians and their audiences, and wanted it to be this kind of huge creative experiment.
Nice. So they weren't just like tequila, Beatles tequila.
No, exactly. I think it's
Beatles
really,
LSD.
or a pop brand.
Yeah. They actually thought about something that aligned with their vision and could bring some positivity to the world.
Yes. So it was in the creation of this record label where Magritte's apple comes into focus. So the Beatles publicist Derek Taylor remembered that Paul McCartney had a name for the new company almost immediately. He said, quote, "We're starting a brand new form of business. So what's the first thing that a child is taught when he begins to grow up? That A is for apple." Then McCartney also suggested the addition of Apple Core, so just a bit of a extension of the Apple idea, but they couldn't register Apple Core, so they registered Apple Corps, like CORPS, but, you know, like the Army Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a play on words there. So,
and I guess it ties into Sgt. Pepper in a way as well, doesn't it, with all the outfits?
Yeah. I actually hadn't thought of that, but yes.
Does it still exist?
It does, but it's been in basically a constant battle for copyright with Apple computers for a long time. Yeah.
I can't help but side with the Beatles in my mind immediately.
No, me too. I know. I turned on Steve Jobs pretty quickly, to be honest. So I have this quote. It's quite long, but I think worth reading. For me, it like kind of transported me into this time and place where, you know, the Beatles were really trying to push creative limits. In an interview in 1993, Paul McCartney recalled, quote, "I had this friend called Robert Fraser, who was a gallery owner in London, and I told him I really loved Magritte. We were discovering Magritte in the 60s just through magazines and things, and we just loved his sense of humour. And when we heard that he was a very ordinary bloke who used to paint from 9 till 1 o'clock and with his bowler hat, it all became more intriguing. Robert used to look around for pictures for me because he knew I liked them. It was so cheap then. It's terrible to think how cheap they were. But anyway, we just loved him. One day he brought this painting to my house. We were out in the garden. It was a summer's day and he didn't want to disturb us. I think we were filming or something. So he left this picture of Magritte. It was an apple and he just left it on the dining room table and he went. It just had written across it, au revoir, on this beautiful green apple. And I thought that was like a great thing to do. He knew I'd love it and he knew I'd want it and that I'd pay him later. So I was like, wow, it was such a great conceptual thing to do, you know. And this big green apple, which I still have now, became the inspiration for the logo. And then we decided to cut it in half for the B-side."
That's so cool. No, I love that. It's like you can't even imagine all this stuff happening. And it's also, it's like nostalgic and innocent in a way.
Yeah, just like
appreciating art together.
Yeah, like looking through magazines and finding new surrealist art and then like just being out in the garden recording and filming, and then an art dealer just drops off this like, you know, beautiful painting, and then it becomes the inspiration for the visual identity for your record label that you're creating as this like beautiful creative experiment. Like, I love it.
And no one has touched a computer or looked on a Pinterest board.
Yes, I know. It's so organic, you know, in the way that these ideas just feed into each other. It's really beautiful, I think. So was born Apple Records. So the logo is very obviously inspired by this Magritte painting. It's a big green apple and just says Apple Records really simply underneath it. But what I think is more iconic is that on all the records, you know, the middle bit of a record, the apple, the green apple appears on the A side with the songs written over the top of it. And then the image of the apple is cut in half, and that appears on the B-side. So this apple motif is serving on all of their records as this instantly recognizable branding element that remains one of the most famous record label designs in history.
Yes, I'm just looking now and it's like, it's so simple, so strong. It's just an apple. Like, they haven't stylized it, but I guess that maybe that if we were analyzing why an apple is such a good symbol, it is that it's quite simple in its shape, isn't it? Like, it's this round, bright, green, attractive shape.
And humans love symbols, right? And so we are fed all of this mythology and storytelling through this symbol of this apple. I wonder if there is something about, like, when we see an apple, something about like our collective unconscious, you know, makes us think of all these things, like not necessarily consciously, but we like connect to this apple as like an important piece of our being. Have I been smoking LSD?
I don't think you smoke it.
You don't smoke LSD, do you?
Which is like probably a good thing that you said that. But no, I agree. I think that like the brain is like, it's a complicated place, and like amazing how it works and connects with these, like, I mean, that's why brand, to bring it back to brand, is so powerful, because like there's so much meaning attached to the objects and like the like logos. There's much more meaning than the shape that it is.
Yeah.
Without us even having time to think about it.
I think that idea is just fascinating, that, humans are just so drawn to symbols because symbols represent stories, and stories is what being human is all about. And that's what branding is all about. So fast forward to 1976. So enters our next player, Apple Computers Inc.
We know who this is, yeah.
So two nerds in a garage somewhere decided to call their new computer company Apple Computers Inc. Now, there is a lot of contention around this and whether Steve Jobs purposely copied the Beatles. He was a lifelong Beatles fan and so would have known about Apple Corps and Apple Records, obviously, and there's multiple stories and lore out there about what happened. So some say that Steve actually approached the Beatles to tell them, like, naively and happily that he was going to name his company after them as a homage, and that they ignored him. Others say that he's always denied that Apple Computers had anything to do with Apple Corps, and he said he picked the name because apples were symbolically the source of knowledge, and additionally would put them ahead of Atari in the phone book.
Smart. You know, I do have to say, like, the Beatles, like you said it yourself, it started a long time ago. The Beatles don't own the Apple symbol.
Very true. Very true. At the end of the day, Steve Jobs was well within his rights to call his company Apple Computers because they weren't in the same industry. So there was no conflict of interest. But there has been complication and a blurred line around at some point, because they have been in legal battles basically for 20 years, 30 years.
No way.
Yeah.
Over the symbol. Who owns the symbol?
Over the name. And so I think it was in the 90s, Apple Computers signed a agreement that they wouldn't enter into the music industry, or maybe it was the 80s. I should know that. But yeah, anyway.
That was what I was starting to think, you know, the streaming service then does.
Yes, so then the complication is that they did enter into the music industry, but they don't produce music. They are purely a technology platform that distributes music.
And then also, how well was Apple, the Beatles, Apple producing, how well was that doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Apple's streaming service is what the final nail in the coffin for them. I think it's like a little bit, and I'm surprised I'm saying this because, like I said, I was going to side pure Beatles, but I'm like, you know, at some point, are you focusing your energy in the wrong area just because it's not working? You're like, well, we can blame Apple Computers for that. And it's like, well, maybe that's not the problem.
By all accounts, Apple Records was, you know, a bit up and down and true to its original form, a beautiful creative experiment. They weren't too cutthroat, but like they did focus way too much energy, in my opinion, on this kind of legal battles. But blah, blah, blah. Apples.
Blah, blah, blah. Apples. That's where we're at now. Apples, apples, apples.
Apples, apples, apples. Steve Jobs has a quote that I think is really pertinent to this idea of great ideas inspiring or influencing more great ideas. And he says, quote, Picasso has a saying, good artists copy, great artists steal. And we have always been shameless about stealing great ideas.
I agree with the sentiment, but I think he said it in a way that's too strong. Like, it's called appropriation. Like, an idea can spur on another idea. You're not stealing ideas.
Yes.
You're looking at things that have been created or someone else has done and going, oh, okay, and that might inspire something. You don't steal ideas.
Absolutely. It has been taken out of context many, many times. And I think he was like really unexpectedly inarticulate about what he was trying to express there.
Yes.
Apple's Bud Tribble, who is one of the original software technologists, said it probably a little bit more eloquently. If you take something and make it your own, it's your design. And that is the dividing line between copying and stealing. And that is part of Apple's DNA.
Yeah.
So
fair enough, Bud.
Yeah, I think it's like, in design and art and creativity and kind of any innovation or scientific, experimentation, anything pushing society forward, we do look to the past and we do stand on the shoulders of that previous knowledge, right?
It's like what you said about Magritte. Like, could then he sue the Beatles? Like, you don't own these things.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, more that like as our job as designers is part of our skill set is identifying what is great and useful and interesting, what is like a great idea or a symbol or a message, and taking that piece of greatness and, reinterpreting it and then infusing it with a new relevance to make it our own and putting that out into the world to represent something new. That's what putting a new brand out into the world is. That's, taking inspiration. You have to first have the skills to identify what is great and what is useful and what is beautiful. Miranda, I was thinking, how many times in our brief we have a question, what brands do you find inspiring? How often do you reckon Apple comes up in people's answers?
Nearly every time.
It's very, very, very common answer. So Apple obviously could be an episode or multiple episodes of its own. So I'm just going to do some top notes of the Apple logo and the Appleness of Apple. But this Apple logo, obviously it's one of the most recognizable brands in the world, symbols in the world. It's evolved since the company's founding in 1976, as you'd expect. The first Apple logo was designed by Ronald Wayne, and it depicted Isaac Newton sitting under the apple tree, referencing that moment of discovery.
No way. That doesn't sound like a logo.
So no, it doesn't look like a logo. It literally looks like this ye olde world, like lino print. So it only lasted a year. Sorry, Ronald.
How funny is that? Because then what they ended up with was like one of those simple, replicable shapes. But they started with like a year old sketch of Isaac Newton. That's very funny to me.
It's crazy. We'll put an image of that up on the Instagram. So that was quickly replaced in 1977. So yeah, only a year, with the sleek bitten apple silhouette that we know and love. So obviously it was slightly different in 1977. The original designer was called Rob Janoff. In the original, the word apple sits in lowercase in this very cool retro 80s font. It's so of the time. And the round lowercase of the A for apple sits in that little bite, which I thought was quite cool. And then the apple itself features this rainbow colour scheme.
So they had the words? They actually had typography apple?
Yes, and the little A sat in the bite.
That's a little penny drop for me as well. Like, there's not many logos that are just a symbol.
Just the symbol.
And I just, that just dropped for me. There's no apple typography. You never see it.
No. It's so crazy, isn't it?
That's like a full bold move by them.
Once again, like I wonder whether it's because we have all these inherited, knowledge and understanding of what Apple means. Like Apple is discovery, Apple is curiosity, Apple is reinvention or chaos or disruption. We have all these inbuilt understanding of what an apple is, and is that why it can just be this symbol, as well as obviously it's an incredibly long-standing, successful, product and company that we know and love. So obviously it all works in together, and there are examples where that happens without the symbol of an apple, like the Nike swoosh, for example.
But even they do have a typeface.
They do, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you were going to get to this, but why the bite?
the missing chunk has inspired many, many theories. Probably the most uninspiring is that it was designed that way so it wouldn't be mistaken for a cherry. Boring.
Yeah.
Next one, say it's a play on words, like a bite, like a BYTE, like a computer bite.
Yeah. I like that. Layers of meaning.
Yes, but the most interesting, or the one that I like the most, is that the bite is an invitation to the viewer. So a reference to knowledge, to curiosity, and taking a leap into the unknown, like the snake offering the apple to Eve, the witch offering the apple to Snow White, like Magritte.
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit of A, B, and C. But I do definitely think it's that humanness, isn't it? It's like this is the apple, a human's taken a bite. We're going to be using the product. So yeah, that one probably I feel like was on the rationale table during development.
Yeah, so the Apple brand, as we mentioned earlier, just before, the Apple sitting on its own as an icon, there's not many that can do that. And I do think that it's because this symbol throughout history has represented discovery, love, uprising, and we implicitly connect that to the symbol, as well as, the company that we know and love, and the addiction that we have to our iPhones.
Yes, I think it's definitely now Apple. You think of the fruit and then you think of the computer or the technology. Like, if not, you think the technology before the fruit. So that is the power of symbolism and brand, hey?
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Next time I clean up one of Henry's little piles of discarded apple peel that he hasn't eaten, I'll do it with a smile on my face.
Good one.
Over to the break. So my story, I went a little bit Shark Tank in this episode, and I wanted to find a crazy startup brand story. And of course, they are plentiful. But this one, as I mentioned at the start, tickled my senses a little bit. And that's a little clue. So Kylie, I'm going to put you right on the spot now, and I'm going to ask you, what are the 5 senses?
I'm like having a blank. So taste.
I did this because I was like, I know this. If someone asked me, my brain would go into
like A-E-I-O-U.
Yeah.
Like,
but yes, taste.
They're vowels. Taste, hearing, sight.
Yeah.
Smell, touch.
You got it. A+, that's what you like, gold star. I know you like that.
You know I like that.
Yeah. When you are, and this is tech, we're in tech still, so when you're online on your Apple computer, which one of those senses do you think's utilised the most?
The most?
Yeah, what sense are you using the most when you're sort of online using your digital?
Eyes, your sight.
Yeah, your sight, yeah. And what else might you use?
Touch, hearing.
Yeah, that's probably it, isn't it?
That's probably it. Yeah, no taste, no smell.
Well, what if I was here to tell you
oh God, what are you going to
that
tell me?
you could add smell to your online experience? Do you want to smell the internet?
I don't. I don't think that is a necessary component to my life. No.
But
tell me more.
That is my clue for today. Do you have any guesses who I might be talking about?
Look, I don't. I'm sorry.
You wouldn't be expected to, because my break story is failed startup from 1999, and it's from a tech company called DigiSense. And DigiSense, as the name suggested, they wanted to bring smell to the digital world. So I wouldn't expect you to guess this failed startup from 1999 unless
99, such a good time in the discovery of the internet. Can you remember first seeing the internet?
Oh, like Ask Jeeves. I remember Ask Jeeves and like just the really basic Alta Vista searching and stuff like that, yes.
I can remember the first time I saw the internet. We were at school and my friend...
You remember that moment?
I remember the moment. I was at school, huddled around a collective computer, and my friend Nicole Sidoti showed me the Friends website.
What? They had a website?
Yes, I guess they were one of the first. And she was like, have you seen the internet? This is the
Have you seen the internet? It's so
and
cute.
like we were huddled around the computer and she showed us their friend's website and was trying to explain to us like what it is, and you can go on here and everyone can go on here and see the same thing. It was like mind-blowing.
I wonder if you can dig that up. That would be so good to see the original Friends website. So 90s. But yes, DigiSense. The founders were two Stanford grads, much like, previous episodes. Stanford was just like banging out the.
Was it bourbon?
It was Bourbon by Instagram. Kevin from
name?
Instagram. Just Kev from Instagram. But yeah, Stanford just churns out these tech entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, Joel Bellinson and Dexter Smith did not land on $1 billion game-changing brand with DigiSense. So their hope was to revolutionize the interwebs by bringing the experience of smell to online users. At the time when they were like obviously going around and sort of promoting the start of this idea, their founder story that Bellinson was sharing was that they were on holiday in Florida. And what he said is there were all these hot ladies, nice beaches, good vibes, and the smells were just hitting me. And he took a deep breath and he said, man, is there some way I can capture this and give all the other loser geeks on the internet a taste of the outside world?
Oh, God.
It's so cringe.
It's so cringy. Imagine if you said something as cringy as that and it lived on the internet forever and ever.
99.
All these hot girls.
And then like loser geeks on the internet. Like I'm like, well, isn't that your target market? And just even the idea of internet geeks, like that's kind of doesn't exist anymore. We're all internet geeks.
We're all internet geeks, that's for sure.
Bellinson and Smith. So Bellinson, they were a molecular biologist and industrial engineer. So also perhaps not the pillars of pop culture and cool. There's no Beatles, Paul McCartney's here, right?
Situation, yeah.
No, but they wanted to found a story. So basically what you could do was buy this sort of smallish sized speaker device and you'd attach it to your computer using a cable, like I guess whatever the USB was of the 90s. And so this device could emit various smelly vapors into your personal space. And what you'd have to do is you'd go to a scent-enabled portal on your browser, and then using your mouse, you'd click on a smell, so perhaps peanut butter or seaside, and then the device would waft that smell into your room to elevate your experience.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
so you actively had to participate in the smelling of the vapor.
Well, I guess basically you would have to buy the device, plug it in. It had these little vials.
No, but I mean like in the moment you had to be I'm looking at the picture of a beach. I'd like to smell a beach. Let me go and click into this application, click beach.
Yes.
Not for me, but maybe if I was watching White Lotus.
Which you are about 24 hours of a day at the moment.
Yeah. 22, come on, I've got to sleep. I'm just trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. If there was like some coconut sun cream smell that like intuitively wafted from the, TV as I was watching it and I didn't have to like do anything. It was part of the 4D experience, maybe, but.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're saying is where it was positioned was maybe with gaming. Like you could, if you were doing gaming online, you could smell mud if you were in battle. Even I think they did have gunpowder and like weird smells like that. But again, it can't interrupt your experience with you it had to come out naturally. And actually this idea, this isn't the first time, this is an iteration because in movie theaters, I think in the 50s as well, they tried to have smell emitters so people could sit there and watch a movie. But apparently it just cost like millions of dollars and at the end of the day, it didn't add a huge amount to viewers' experiences. This is a little bit of a novelty. So apparently this idea was pretty hot because they raised $20 million of backing from like some big fancy tech corps to build this prototype.
That is so much money. I mean, it's so much money now, but in 1999, that's also like exponentially more.
Well, I don't really know what happened to that money because the prototype was as far as it ever went. As far as the technology goes, I still think it's wild to me what people are capable of. Like, they thought of it as a printing press of smell, and they likened it to Pantone in this way. So, encoding smells into cartridges, and these vials would be mixed to produce thousands of smells. Like, that's incredibly smart. Through this story, I am throwing no shade at technology and people being able to innovate in this crazy way. The CEOs, actually, their previous company was called Double Twist, and it was the first biotech company that could analyze the human genome. So very incredibly smart people at the helm here, Bellinson and Dexter. They're incredibly, incredibly smart people.
But it's almost like what you say, like they wanted a founder story, right? Feels a bit ego-driven maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like they wanted to position themselves as innovators with the hottest new technology and do something different with it without sort of thinking about, does it need to be done?
Yes.
So, like I said, it's not the tech I have an issue with. It's more the execution of the brand and the lack of concept that I think ultimately failed the technology that they were creating. So this takes me to the branding segment, and my first big gripe with the brand is the naming of the device. So this is kind of one of those stories that really writes itself for me, because you can't make this up. But they didn't name the device DigiSense. That was the company.
Okay.
They wanted to brand the device to have its own name, and what they called it was the iSmell. So just not sense checking it at all.
Yeah, so anytime you're kind of mentioning that you have this new product called iSmell, you're just saying iSmell.
Yeah, I've got the iSmell. And in this,
I've got the iSmell. Look, I can see where we're going with it. Like, I smell the ocean, or I smell a petunia. But why did I think of a petunia? So niche.
I think this brings it home, is that I found a YouTube video at a tech conference, and Joel Bellinson is being interviewed, and he's wearing his branded iSmell t-shirt. So he has iSmell written across.
Him.
Yeah, it's written across his chest. And I'm like, did the penny not drop? Like, this smart people and willingly wearing iSmell t-shirts. Anyway, my second gripe is the design itself. So the iSmell was in the shape they chose for this product was designed, and they've chosen this, designed to look like a shark fin.
What?
Yeah, so
a shark fin?
Yes, it was a shark fin shape. And I can't help but think that bears absolutely no relevance to the name of the product or what the product does.
This is also perplexing.
Yeah, it's just, I think this is where I was like, it's so important to have a through line. It's not just about the visual identity. You need to have a concept, and like your story illustrates this so beautifully, is like that concept and having like meaning backed behind the decisions that you're making. We've talked about the apple bite and all the meaning behind just that little aspect and why that's so important in brand building. But to just go random name, I smell random shape. Yeah, I smell shark fin. Yeah.
Like, if you see a shark fin, like, that's not a good sign.
No, it's danger.
Was it meant to be a shark fin? Or
I think so.
Are you just like looking at it and going, oh, that looks like a shark fin? Or does the literature say that it is a shark?
The literature was pointing towards a shark fin, on my Googling. So what I thought we could do here, Kylie, and again, I'm going to put you on the spot, is we're going to pop on our 90s power suits. We're going to head down to the whiteboard of the Californian startup boardroom, and we're going to pitch an alternate future for iSmell. So we're going to come up with some better names and shapes for the product.
Okay, so we're down. We've got our power suits. We've had a business ladies lunch.
Yes, and
we're going to head into the boardroom.
We're going to get the chalk out and scribble some names and shapes onto the chalkboard. Seeing I'm throwing you under the bus here, I will start. And like, let's be real, I have pre-thought about this, but I thought, what thing is super iconic and matches smell other than a nose? I thought maybe a flower. So a cute little flower-shaped device, and you could call it the bloom caster.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. Or the other one I had was instead of the iSmell, you could use a little eye, which we know iPhone, it's got legs. You could use the eye and call it the iRoma, so a play on aroma.
Also a good option.
So who knows, if we had been there back then, there might not be iPhones because iRoma would be the household name.
If only we were there. If only we weren't mere teenagers.
What about you, Kylie?
I like your idea of the flower, and that makes me think of
Opportunia.
a petunia. Very specific. The idea that, you know, it's an object, right, that it sits on your desk so that you might want it to look really pretty. And then that's made me think of the perfume daisy that has a big daisy on it. So maybe like a perfume bottle, and you could call it Odor Megabyte or something like that.
Oh, love it. Odor Bite.
Odor Bite.
Yeah. A little bit classy. We can draw a few circles around words and like make a little bit of...
We'd land on something.
There'd be a word map, and we wouldn't end up with a shark fin called the iSmell. That's where we wouldn't end up.
That's so tech bro, isn't it?
It's really bad.
It could be a shark fin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A shark fin. Yeah.
Okay, next.
And we'll call it the iSmell. Yeah.
Yeah. T-shirts, hats.
Order the merch. Get a whiteboard in here straight.
I love that we're mocking the people who like mapped the human genome. But, you know, stay in your lanes.
Hey, they said hot girls in Florida.
True, we're allowed to.
We're allowed
that
to.
gives us license.
Yeah.
Okay, that was, you know, problems with the brand story, problems with the concept, the identity. I had a look. I don't think it was ever fully resolved. Like I said, it was more prototype. They did have a sort of logo made in this 90s scratchy font that said iSmell. But what I think we can see is like how important that brand story and strategy is to create a logical story for people to connect with, because if it's not there, like it just becomes random and confusing, and it was very confusing. So the next thing I thought about was with brands, you know, we'll often, if we're doing strategy, we'll look at space in the market. Like if there's, you know, because there might be multiple smelling device brands, which is not, but there might be like multiple water brands, and you're looking at how you can position that to a particular market and make a difference so that they can have some ownable space and cut through. But I do think that if you are looking for space in the market for making the internet smell, you know, it's empty for a reason. There's no real problem to solve here.
That is so true. There is no problem to solve here. It's empty for a reason. We don't need to smell the internet. We don't need to taste the internet either.
Like, when would you need this? Like, you know, a birthday, for example, you could send someone a birthday message and then they could click into the portal and smell birthday cake.
Like, who wants to smell a birthday cake and then not be able to eat it as well?
Yeah, exactly. Just be sad.
When I went to Movie World last year, like the adult
Yeah, you did.
They have this experience called the 4D Tom and Jerry show. And so you go in and it's like one of those things where like the seats move and like, you know, a mist of water comes down and then air kind of gets popped in your face. And I think there might have even been a smell, come to think of it. But
sounds amazing.
Yeah, but like it kind of wasn't. Like kind of getting jerked around in the seat and getting like a mist and like... For me, I was glad when the 10 minutes was up, and I was like, if I had to watch a whole movie like that, I know it's meant to be like an immersive experience, but for me it actually stopped the immersion in, like, obviously it was just Tom and Jerry, so it's not exactly an immersive film experience, but I couldn't almost concentrate on what was going on because I kept like jerking around and like, getting wet on my head, and I was just like, this is so unnecessary.
We don't need to be sprayed with water in the head. This aside, Digi-Sense is gone, didn't make it. Apparently people cannot stop trying to do this. Multiple organisations over time keep having a crack at a digital smell machine despite the lack of its use. I did find in its newest 2025 iteration a very flashy looking company called Osmo, and they are digitizing scent, as they put it. And look, again, they are doing lots of cool things, and they're kind of coming at it from an AI for scent angle. and they recently teleported a scent called Plum 0.1. So again, no shade at the technology. This is crazy stuff. But what I found with this one is it seems incredibly non-user friendly. So basically what I could gather, and it's quite complicated, is you first need to capture the scent you want to use using a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. And I'm not sure if I said that right.
I've got one of those.
Yeah, you got one of those in your back cupboard. But
Yeah.
basically what that does is it identifies the smell molecules, and then using AI, they create a scent map. And then you send that map formula and it gets recreated at its next port using a specialized printer, which is apparently roughly the size of a refrigerator. At this point, I'm like, bring back the iSmell. At least that was like a desktop device.
Like, I feel like this is a product for someone who has absolutely nothing else to do. This is a product for like Elon Musk.
Yeah. This is a hobby for Elon Musk and Elon Musk only.
The idea that I would scent map something so that I could send it in and then smell a plum when what? I'm
using your refrigerator device.
What?
Obviously, this is teleporting scent isn't easy. How they're pitching this is kind of like they're the do-gooders in the world by democratizing scent for the masses. You know, there's been fragrance inequity. I'm not sure if you knew this, Kylie, but the fragrance houses have been holding the key to scent. This is a hardship that humankind has endured for too long. The founder, he wrote on one of his articles on the website that fragrance should belong to everyone, but as it stands, the fragrance industry leaves a lot of us out. The trouble is, the craft has barely changed. Producing fragrance is as much as it was in the 19th century, hyper-exclusive, opaque, and slow. Generation exists because the world no longer needs to work that way. Fragrance should be for everyone. Fragrance can be for everyone.
Oh my God. This is like the equivalent of like do good, the greenwashing. That's insane.
Yes. Just be what you are. You're trying to send smells across the internet. You're not. Why don't you own the fact that you are amazing at technology or you're amazing at innovation? Why do you have to be like solving humanity's problems like when, you know, there's actually way bigger problems?
Yeah, like if your true intention was to democratize human problems, like there's a lot of other things that you could democratize except for scent.
I feel like the way he's talking, it would be like how you talk about, a company would talk about like trying to balance the gender pay gap, but it's like about making fragrance accessible so we can all make our own perfumes. Like what? Big eye roll. Much like the iSmell, the actual technology is wild sci-fi. Can't believe people are that insanely smart. But I do think the 2025 version, you know, the research is like valuable and, you know, it's incredible that people are looking into these things. And, you know, if we can teleport smell, can we then teleport other things? You know, it's cool. But as a consumer product, it remains that there's no hole to fill. There's no problem that needs solving. And that's why we've got him saying this crazy stuff, because he's trying to create a problem to solve.
Yeah. And I wonder whether it could be like a building block if it's about transporting scent, as you say. Like, is this just a building block to something greater? And in like 20 or 30 years, it's actually like this started, you know, something else. But at the moment, it's positioned as like this is just a consumer product and it feels empty and vacuous and you're just trying to like make money.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
It's not there yet.
No, at the moment, why would you want a refrigerator-sized gadget to ping your friends with smell? The only thing people are going to be doing is sending fart smells. Like if we can't be trusted with an eggplant emoji, what do you think people are going to do when they can send smells? Like this is where we're at, people.
We can't be trusted. Humans can't have nice things.
And humans can't behave themselves on the internet, and we know that. But that ends my story of iSmell. And yeah, it was interesting to me. I didn't know that Osmo and all this stuff was going on. I didn't know that smells needed to be transported.
I didn't know that smell needed to be democratized.
No, definitely didn't know that. But I mean, I'm curious. I might make myself a little scenty scent, a little petunia number.
I smell, you smell, yeah. We all smell.
We all smell for iSmell. All right.
Well done.
We're good at taglines. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. As a reminder, if you want to see any of the visuals of what we've been talking about today, you can see them on our Instagram at Brand Odyssey Pod.
Yes, Miranda and I from brand agency 3 Blocks Left, and you can see our work at 3blocksleft.com.au or on our Instagram.
And so ends another expedition into the lands of brands and design. We hope you loved it as much as we love creating it. If you did, we would love you to follow us so you never miss an episode and to help other people find us. Until next time, stay on the Odyssey, brave creatives. Bye.
Bye.